Hi, both. Thanks for joining us today on our Business Gurus channel, where we will be discussing key business topics to help students grasp the most important elements of their course in preparation for their exams and future career. Let's get started.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you've ever wondered why some products seem to explode onto the scene and disappear just as fast, while others, like certain classic brands, manage to perpetually reinvent themselves, you're asking one of the foundational questions of business. Today, we are deep diving into the product life cycle, or PLC. This isn't just some diagram in a textbook. It's really the strategic roadmap that dictates every major decision a business makes about its offering, from pricing to promotion. Our mission is to move past that textbook definition and really unpack how top businesses try to manipulate this cycle. The sales, the profitability, and the strategic choices that change so dramatically over time.
Yeah, it's kind of like the ultimate crystal ball for product managers, isn't it? A business uses the PLC to, well, proactively guide pretty much all their strategies. By identifying where a product sits on this curve, it immediately defines their priorities. Are they focused on just building awareness, or maybe fighting off market saturation, or even planning for a graceful exit? Tells them what to do next.
Okay, let's maybe try and unpack this visually for a moment. We're talking about that classic sort of bell-shaped curve that plots sales against time, and it's broken down into 5 critical phases. The key to understanding this isn't just the rise and fall of the curve itself, I think, but recognizing the huge strategic shifts that happen between each of these stages. So the journey starts not really on the main curve that people see, but entirely off stage, right, with the first phase, development.
Exactly.
This is where the product is still kind of a secret. It's consuming resources like crazy, but generating absolutely zero revenue.
Precisely. And when you look at the financials associated with this stage, you see the cost curve just skyrocketing. Heavy investment in R&D, design validation, maybe rigorous testing. This initial financial outlay, this high degree of risk before anything even launches, it fundamentally dictates the strategies they really have to adopt immediately in the next phase. It sets the stage.
Okay, so if development is all about sinking massive capital, maybe taking on debt, how do businesses shift their mindset when they transition to the high stakes gamble of introduction? This is when the product finally hits the market.
Well, the shift is immediate and it's pretty dramatic. In the introduction phase, the main goal really is rapid awareness. Sales are low naturally because the product's new, and initial profit is often negative or, you know, basically non-existent because promotional spending, that P for promotion in the marketing mix, is extremely high. You're essentially teaching the market that you even exist.
And crucially, this is where those early financial decisions, particularly around pricing, they become critical
Yeah.
and often conflicting, right? Businesses that have spent maybe years in development need to recoup that investment and fast.
That's absolutely right. And we tend to see two dominant pricing strategies emerge right here. If the product is truly innovative, maybe has few immediate substitutes, think about like cutting edge proprietary tech, the company will often use price skimming. They set that initial price extremely high to basically skim the maximum revenue they can from those early adopters, the ones willing to pay a premium just to have it first.
But wait, doesn't that strategy carry a massive risk? I mean, it limits the size of your initial market right when you desperately need traction,
If
doesn't
it,
it?
as it absolutely does, which is precisely why the alternative is penetration pricing. If the product is, say, less proprietary and the goal is immediate market share dominance, think maybe a new breakfast cereal or some kind of mass market software tool, they'll launch with a very low price. The goal isn't profit just yet. The goal is volume, driving down production costs through economies of scale, hopefully, and creating high barriers for any future competitors thinking of jumping in.
Fascinating. It's amazing how those two, like, completely contradictory pricing moves can define the success or failure of that critical first year. So, okay, that heavy promotion and that strategic pricing eventually, hopefully, pay off, pushing the product into the next phase, growth. Now, here's where it gets really interesting on the graph. That rapid upward curve finally begins.
hmm And this stage is really fueled by the market's rising awareness. It validates the product's value proposition. People are starting to get it. Sales volumes begin to increase sharply, and critically, profitability starts to take hold. This happens as production volume ramps up and those initial high R&D and promotional costs start to get spread out over more units.
What stands out here strategically is the absolute necessity for scale,
hmm
right? If you've chosen penetration pricing, you now need really robust distribution, the place in the marketing mix, just to keep up with demand. And if you chose skimming, you might start maybe lowering the price just a little bit to attract that next wave of consumers, the ones who are a bit more price sensitive.
Exactly. And you also start seeing the first serious competitors emerge. They've watched your introduction phase, they've seen your early success, and now they're working furiously to clone or adapt your product. So the focus in growth shifts from just creating awareness to actually refining the product itself, using those design mix elements like function and aesthetics to really solidify the brand before the market gets too crowded.
Yeah, building that loyalty early.
Yeah.
But, well, no rocket ship flies forever, unfortunately. As that rapid sales growth starts to slow down, we hit the longest and you could argue the most competitive phase of the PLC,
Right.
maturity. This is that leveling off point on the curve.
Right. And what's fascinating here is that the growth rate slows, but the actual sales volume itself often peaks during this stage. The market is basically saturated. The vast majority of potential consumers who are going to buy it probably already own the product, or at least they know all about it. Competition becomes absolutely brutal. Businesses spend an enormous amount of energy just defending the market share they already have.
So how does this strategy have to change in maturity? If you can't dramatically grow the overall market anymore, you must have to start stealing customers from the competition.
Right. Exactly. You pivot hard toward differentiation. You're constantly modifying the product to keep it fresh. Maybe new colors, new features, different packaging, minor tech updates, really anything to signal value that the competitor doesn't have. This is where that design mix is constantly being tweaked. Function might improve just marginally, or the aesthetics might get a total overhaul to appeal to a slightly different segment of the market.
So we're really talking about market segmentation in action here, aren't we? Instead of aiming for everyone like you might have in growth, you start refining your appeal to specific niche groups that maybe haven't been fully served yet.
Precisely. You might introduce value versions of the product to fight on price in one segment and maybe premium versions with added features in another. The whole strategic fight isn't about capturing a brand new market anymore. It's about strategically delaying the inevitable decline by maximizing the time you spend at that peak revenue level.
But even the most fiercely defended product, the one with the best differentiation, eventually faces that inevitable downward trend on the graph. Decline.
Yeah, and the decline is usually driven by external factors. It could be a change in consumer tastes, or maybe more commonly, the arrival of a truly disruptive replacement technology. I mean, think about the physical media market. Streaming didn't just compete with DVDs, it essentially made them obsolete for most people. Sales fall simply because the product has become outdated or just less desirable than the alternatives.
Okay, so once a product officially enters the decline stage, what are the strategic options? It sort of feels like the business is just waiting for the inevitable funeral at that point.
Well, the strategic options are harsh, but they are necessary. You basically have two main routes: harvesting or divestment. Harvesting means you drastically cut investment, slashing promotion, R&D, maybe maintenance, but you continue to sell the product for as long as it generates any positive cash flow. You're essentially milking the last drops out of the remaining market. Divestment, on the other hand, means you cut your losses entirely. You sell the brand off, maybe license it, or just drop the product line completely to free up those resources for developing something new.
Which brings us to the key question, I think, that every business leader must ask at some point. Is decline truly the end? Or can that product curve somehow be bent or stretched or perhaps even rebooted to avoid that harsh fate of divestment? And this is exactly where these things called extension strategies come into play. They are planned, quite aggressive attempts by a business to prolong the life cycle of a product and essentially force that curve back into an extended maturity phase or maybe even kickstart a smaller secondary growth phase.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, extension strategies are probably the ultimate demonstration of strategic flexibility. They help the business extract more value from an asset they already have, an established product, avoiding that incredibly costly and risky process of launching an entirely new product right from the development stage again.
Okay, can you give us some concrete examples of how this actually looks in the market? I mean, how does a mature product really get a reboot like that?
Sure, there are probably three classic routes. First, there's product modification. And this isn't just slapping on a new color, it's about finding a genuinely new function or use. Think of something like baking soda, a product that's been around forever, right? Its extension strategy included heavy promotion of its non-baking uses, as a fridge deodorizer or a cleaning agent. That effectively generated a whole new revenue stream and reset its relevance for modern consumers.
Right, finding a totally new job for an old familiar item.
Mhm.
Okay, what about the second route?
Second is market penetration into new demographics. A perfect example here is the classic toy manufacturer Lego. For decades, they focused primarily on children. Their extension strategy involved launching these high-end, really complex sets specifically targeting adults and collectors. You see the architecture series, or those hyper-detailed movie tie-ins like Star Wars ships. They took a mature product and successfully pushed it into a completely new, often high-margin consumer segment.
Wow, yeah. That significantly changes the PLC curve for them, creating a whole new upward slope based on an audience they previously ignored.
Yeah.
Okay, and the third route.
The third is finding new geographic markets. So once a product reaches saturation point in its home market, say North America or Western Europe, the company pivots to aggressive expansion into emerging international markets. Places where the PLC for that same product might still be way back in the introduction or growth phases. You're effectively running multiple staggered life cycles for the same product, just concurrently across the globe.
Absolutely brilliant. And this whole strategic cycle just reinforces the incredible value of the PLC as a tool, doesn't it? It guides these crucial business strategies across all 5 stages, constantly requiring the business to reassess that marketing mix price, promotion, place, and the product itself at precisely the right moment for each stage.
Ultimately, the PLC isn't just some descriptive graph. It's really a proactive planning tool. It shows when and why these different strategic levers need to be pulled. It's the framework that explains, why heavy promotion is so necessary in introduction, why that incremental differentiation is absolutely key in maturity, and why those aggressive extension strategies really need to be deployed just as sales start to dip towards decline.
So what does all this mean for you, the consumer, listening to this? Well, recognizing these stages helps you understand that things like price drops or dramatic shifts in advertising or the launch of those new and improved, slightly modified versions, they aren't just random events. They are very specific tactical moves. It might be a desperate fight for market share when a product is firmly stuck in maturity, or it could be a clear signal that a clever extension strategy is being launched to give it new life.
Yeah, it definitely changes how you engage with products, I think. You stop viewing, say, a new and improved package as just simple marketing fluff, and instead you start to see it as a calculated strategic investment aimed squarely at avoiding those tough, costly decisions of harvesting or worse, divestment.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought for you to maybe chew on. If a business implements a truly successful extension strategy like Lego, brilliantly tapping into the adult market, and they successfully reset the product's life cycle, does that product ever truly reach a second life and actually escape that original curve? Or is every subsequent extension, no matter how clever, merely a strategic delay, just postponing the inevitable decline potentially indefinitely?
It makes you think about those classic brands, doesn't it? The ones that have been around for 50, maybe even 100 years. Are they genuinely immortal in some way, or are they just absolute masters of strategic life support, constantly finding new ways to stay relevant generation after generation?
Something to ponder. That's all the time we have for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks to both of you for joining us today. You've been listening to the Business Gurus. Let's now hand it over to you. What further questions do you have based on what we've discussed so far? Leave a comment and we'll get back to you right away. If you haven't already, hit that follow for more business tips.